What's up everybody on YouTube? AJ Russ about to discuss another video, and as you can see today we have the third video in my 2025 NBA playoff preview, and today we'll be talking about why the Western Conference and really the NBA in general shouldn't underestimate the Houston Rockets. And this is a video I've been looking forward to make for a while. I obviously know the success that the Houston Rockets have had this season. At the recording of this video, having 49-26 record, being the second seed in the Western Conference this year, it's safe to say that no one expected the Rockets to have this type of success so quickly this year. And obviously we know the type of jump they made last year in the 23-24 season, the first season under head coach Ime Udoka, advancing the Rockets from in the 2023 season from having 22 wins to 41 wins. That was a great thing in itself. We know the type of post All-Star break performance that Jaylen Green had, averaging around 30 something points per game, going crazy. But ultimately the Rockets dealt with Alperen Sengun getting hurt last year, which made them slightly miss the NBA play-in last year. But this season, really from the jump, they've been hot, and they've had, you know, some losing streaks, but ultimately for most of 2025 and really just of this whole season, they've been hovering around anywhere from the 2 seed to the 4 to 5 seed. And right now it looks like the Rockets will be, hopefully knock on wood, the 2 seed for these Western Conference playoffs. And that's really a testament to how this team has been developed throughout the past 3 to 4 years after being in ultimate purgatory after trading James Harden. As a fellow Houstonian and a person that is a fan and supports the Rockets, and also I cover the Rockets for ESPN Houston, it's really been a very rewarding thing seeing this team's turnaround this year, and the type of young assets and pieces that they've added in the years really since the 2021 draft that has helped this rebuild happened so quickly, not only from a draft standpoint but also from the free agent standpoint, adding in guys like a Fred VanVleet in the 2023 free agency and Dillon Brooks. And at times when it happened, people looked at it as an overpay, but really it's been a couple of signings that's been one of the most foundational reasons why the Rockets have played well this season and been in the position that they are. And I think one thing that goes without saying, and a lot of people has recognized, is that this team has completely been transformed this season since Amen Thompson has entered the starting lineup. Now we all know for this season he's averaging around 14 points per game, 8 rebounds, almost 4 assists, shooting 55% from the field. A lot of people, you know, talk about his 3-point shot. Once he gets that going all the way consistently, it's going to be a problem. I completely agree, but even now though, he can make them sometimes, and as he continues to develop and get even better, I think that's going to be one thing that's going to make him even more unguardable. But since he's entered a starting lineup specifically, his numbers are even better than what his averages are for the season. He's averaging 16 points per game, nearly 10 rebounds, and nearly 5 assists in 36 games as a starter for the Rockets this year. And we're going to continue to elaborate and talk about him more in this video, but I think that him fundamentally, and obviously a player like Alperen Sengun and even Jaylen Green, who receives a lot of flack at times, are some of the biggest reasons why this Houston Rockets team has taken another notch and another level this season, because the young players have been able to develop. And last year, Amen Thompson as a rookie dealt with an ankle injury, dealt with some different injuries that I think just obviously we wouldn't have seen him have this type of jump last year, but we see the type of versatility that he has had offensively but also defensively, him and Tari Eason. I mean, it just goes without saying how deep this Rockets team is, the type of young pieces that they have, and they have a lot of good young pieces. And then sometimes it's hard to find minutes for like a guy like Cam Whitmore, who we see has a lot of potential as well. They have a really good problem there. So I think that this Rockets team, the type of depth that they have and versatility offensively and defensively, in the mix of veterans like Dillon Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams at times providing great minutes as well too, even players like Aaron Holiday, I think that this team shouldn't be underestimated in the playoffs. I know a lot of people look at the Rockets team not having a true number one, saying that they are like a trade away from being true championship contenders, but hey, let's see what these playoffs consist of. And in this video we're going to talk about why I wouldn't even be surprised at all if the Rockets made the conference finals. So we're going to continue to elaborate and talk about that even more throughout the video, so stay tuned for that for sure. But yeah guys, with that being said though, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. You know we post about here videos about the NBA, NFL, Marvel, DC, pop culture, all videos and things of that nature. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter /X at Swaggy Russ. On social media, if you want to talk about sports in general, just stay tuned for different news and things I have going on here on the channel and in sports media in general. And with that being said, let's talk about why the league shouldn't underestimate the Houston Rockets in these 2025 NBA playoffs. So obviously in the intro, I spent a lot of time talking about how the Rockets were able to transform and really revitalize themselves in the past 3 to 5 years after trading James Harden, after making all these moves and free agency and stuff like that. But I think really a lot of people lose sight of how much of a hit of a draft pick that Alperen Sengun was. Obviously him and Jaylen Green, they got extended this offseason to some multi-year contracts, and rightfully so. But Alperen Sengun being a first-year All-Star this year, and really a lot of people people a couple of years ago saw the type of potential that he had, even in a season like 22-23 when the Rockets had a awful 22-6 record, which was a season that led them being able to get the 4th overall pick and getting Amen Thompson. But even in a year like that, Alperen Sengun, he averaged essentially 15 points per game, 9 rebounds and 4 assists. So there was definitely different flashes of how good he can be, and the same goes with Jaylen Green. But Alperen Sengun being involved in a draft trade with Oklahoma City Thunder, being a 16th pick overall, and that year a lot of people also forget the Rockets had 4 first-round picks that year. Obviously drafting a Jaylen Green at number 2 overall, then getting Sengun, then getting 2 other players that didn't end up working out for them, Usman Garuba and Joshua Christopher. But Sengun, he's been an absolute hit of a draft pick at that position, and this year we see him being an all-star for the first time in his career, averaging 19 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, almost 11 rebounds, and 5 assists, shooting 49% from the field. And I know a lot of people are going to point to his 3-point percentage not being the best 3-point shooter, but he's been starting to take them more when he's wide open for a pick and pop 3, and obviously the defenders are going to live with a shot. But now he's been able to start making them, and it's kind of a similar conversation to with him and Amen Thompson. Obviously Alperen Sengun is a big, so his responsibility is different, but if he can start making those 3-pointers a little more consistently, that's going to give the defenders the responsibility to be honest, and it makes him even more versatile. So I think that the type of impact that Alperen Sengun has had, being able to be mentored as a Houston Rocket since being drafted from players like, of course, Hall of Famer and legend, and honestly one of the top 10 players in the league of all time, and Hakeem Olajuwon. Also learning from veterans in the league like a Steven Adams, even on a roster now he doesn't play the most, but Jeff Green. Just different vets like that have helped him being able to hone into his game, and him being able to develop under a head coach like Emi Udoka has put him in great positions to be successful. Even further with that though, I really want to talk a lot about Jaylen Green, guys, because he is really, I think he's the most polarizing player on the Houston Rockets. I say that obviously, like I said, I'm from the Houston area. I think another polarizing player on the Rockets is Cam Whitmore, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Jaylen Green, in my opinion, from the NBA community and in Houston for sure, he is so polarizing, and a lot of people, of course, I talked about the trade conversations, things like that. In the offseason, if they make a trade, trading KD, you have to trade Jaylen Green, or if they try to get Devin Booker, you have to trade Jaylen Green. Well, I will say, guys, I'm not gonna lie, I do like what Jaylen Green brings to the table. I know what a lot of people mean with his inconsistency at times too, but when he is good, he is really freaking good. I lightly mentioned this stat in the intro, but looking at last year before I talk more about this year and how Jaylen Green has played, we all talk about, obviously people were making a meme about, Jaylen Green becoming a father last year in March 2024, around that area, and how electric he played, but it was so real. First and foremost, before I talk about his averages, the Rockets were 13-2 in March 2024, and that was when they were trying to fight their way into him playing, and like I talked about, they nearly missed the play-in last year, but obviously this year they're going to make the playoffs and be a top seed. But in that span, Jaylen Green essentially averaged 28 points per game, 6 rebounds and 4 assists in those 15 games in March of 2024, which also consisted of a 42-point game, a 37-point game against Oklahoma City, who was a 1 seed, mind you, last year, and obviously is going to be the 1 seed this year as well too. Another 37-point game as well, and a 41-point game too, so obviously that had him averaging nearly 28 points per game in that span. So that's really just to prove how him playing at that type of level, it led to real winning. And him playing this year, I know, like I said, a lot of people, and Rockets fans in particular, Rockets have had like a few down losing streaks throughout this season, like earlier this year in January and February area, and really before the All-Star break, that's when a lot of Rockets fans were getting skeptical and kind of mad about not only Jaylen Green, but just the team in general, how they were playing, and obviously they needed a break. But now I think this year he's been really good. He's averaging not a career high, but nearly averaging 21.5 points per game, almost 22 points per game, on 5 rebounds and 4 assists, shooting 42.5% from the field. So not the greatest percentage from the field. Like I said, sometimes he is a little streaky, shooting 34% from the 3-point line, but he does enough to help you get in positions to do well, and it's worth, in my opinion, to keep him still. And like I said, really this playoff run, it's going to prove a lot, because if he has a playoff run where he's averaging 25 to 30 points per game and the Rockets make the second round or third round, I think you have to consider keeping him. And like, honestly, bro, if the Rockets, even if they win a playoff series and they lose in the second round, lose like in 6 or 7 games in the second round, I think that's respectable, because like I said, no one expected the Rockets to be in this position from the jump anyways. And of course, you're always going to try to improve your roster. In my opinion, if you can get someone like a Devin Booker for Jaylen Green, I would pull the trigger. But if you're not improving your roster like that, if you can only get a player like KD, who will be 37 next season, and don't get me wrong, Kevin Durant is a legend, trust me, one of the greatest players, greatest scorers of all time, walking buckets, Slim Reaper for sure, I would not make that trade, to be honest. If they're asking for Jaylen Green, Alperen Sengun, anything like that, I can't do it, because I think that this team is trending upwards. And Jaylen Green, he just turned 23 in February, so he's not even close to his prime yet. This is literally his 4th season, and the same thing goes with Alperen Sengun. This is his 4th season as well. These players are continuing to trend in an upwards fashion. You don't give up on a player like that, especially when your team is so consistent right now, and your team is really playing good basketball at the right time, trying to get things right and establishing themselves as a Western Conference contender for years to come potentially. And that does does bring me now to talk about more of the role of the veterans on this team with a Fred VanVleet. I really thought that he was a good pickup, and when I saw the numbers, like I said, it did seem like an overpay in the 2023 offseason when the Rockets fired him and Dillon Brooks. But now those have been two integral and great signings, and there's been potential discussions of Fred VanVleet getting a contract extension after this season. I think it will be well warranted. Obviously, he is 31 years old now, but he's still having good production. He dealt with some lingering ankle injuries in the past month and change, but he's been able to be back and be consistent, of course, this season, averaging around 14.5 points per game, 5 assists. I will say one thing though, he isn't as efficient that he was like last year, for example, where he shot 41% from the field, shooting 38% from three. This year, like I said, he's shooting 38% from the field and only 34% from the three. But him just being the floor general that he is, being essentially kind of like another coach on the floor, helping these young players, I think that he's been a real reason also why the Houston Rockets have been able to trend upwards and develop at a high level. And now, you know, the starting lineup that they have, like I said, since Amen Thompson has entered the fold, having Fred VanVleet, Jaylen Green as your backcourt, then adding an Amen Thompson and Dillon Brooks and of course Sengun in the starting lineup, I think that that's been really good together. And I think for me, a few years from now, of course, probably when Fred VanVleet is off of this team, I can really see Amen Thompson being the point guard of this team. And I know he plays small forward right now, he's 6'7", but I think that that presents a lot of things because obviously he's shown you how versatile that he can be in that point forward role. And I think that him learning from a guy like Fred VanVleet, you could see potentially in the future, if the Rockets continue to keep this main core together, having an Amen Thompson and a Jaylen Green type of backcourt. And that's a big backcourt for sure. Amen Thompson 6'7", Jaylen Green being 6'4", that will for sure present problems not only to defenses but also to other teams when they're on offense too, because like I said, Amen Thompson's defensive versatility, and he'll likely be on an all defensive team, first or second team this year, because of the type of impact that he has had, nearly averaging a block per game and almost 1.5 steals per game as well. And with that also, I think that Jaylen Green, he's become kind of in ways an underrated defender. Obviously he's not the best lockdown defender, but he shows a lot of effort on that, and you're not just going to be able to bully him. He's really came a long way in terms of that aspect of his game as well too, so that's a respectable part about Jaylen Green too. But talking about Fred VanVleet, but also moving things on to Dillon Brooks, I'm not gonna lie, I was really not high at all on this signing, especially for the number. I believe it was a 4-year $80 million deal in the 2023 offseason, and it was a time where the whole NBA was down, kind of clowning Dillon Brooks. Of course, LeBron having that 2020 game against the Grizzlies coming off of those playoffs, so it wasn't really the best time for Dillon Brooks, but he got a good payday from the Rockets. And last year, I will say, he had good moments, but I still wasn't satisfied about it. But this year, Dillon Brooks has played really good, and before I talk about his averages, his three-point shooting this year has been great. I believe he had a game this year where he made 9 of 10 threes. He's been really electric from the three-point line this year, and in this season, he's shooting 39% from the three, and he's averaging around 6 attempts per game, so that's really efficient from the three-point range. And he's averaging 14 points per game, 4 rebounds, and almost 2 assists, shooting 42% from the field. So I think that what he provides, obviously we know that he's going to be a dog on defense. That's his strong suit, but him really being a definition of a 3-and-D player on this Houston Rockets team this year particularly, he has had an uptick in his number from the three-point line, shooting 4% better this year than last year from the three-point line, and shooting the most efficient percentage of his career from the three-point line at 39% in the 24-25 season for the Rockets. It's been a huge boost to Houston, who at times are talked about not having a number one scorer, but they are still able to at times when they're hot. And that's one thing I will say too though, sometimes the Rockets can have real scoring droughts and it gets ugly, and that's also how a lot of teams get back in the game against the Rockets. And that was a huge issue last year. They've tamed that down at times this year too, but that also at times is still an issue, so that'll be something to watch in the playoffs too as well, that they still need to find ways to score when they don't necessarily have the hot hand, still try to find ways to get to the free throw line and score in different ways, getting to the rim, things of that nature. When a three-point shot isn't falling, that'll be a concern. But even a player like Dillon Brooks offensively, he has been a really good contributor to this roster, and he's made a real difference. That brings me now to talking about another, really in my opinion, elite defender on the Houston Rockets, and Tari Eason in his third season. And before I talk about him defensively, the impact that he has, even offensively as well too, and we're going to talk about the Rockets having 7 players on the roster average double digits in points per game this year, which is absolutely phenomenal and a reason why they are the 2 seed. That's an incredible stat right there. But Tari Eason himself, offensively, he's averaging 12.2 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, and around 1.5 assists, shooting 48% from the field and around 35% from three. Not the greatest percentage, but he can knock them down when he's open. So I think Tari Eason, you can make the argument that he should be on the defensive team too. Only time will tell as well, because he's missed a solid amount of games, and I know that he's not playing in back-to-backs either, so that'll probably derail him for that. But Tari, he has a lot of potential as a future 3-and-D guy as well too, and could start in the future as well. Say if they continue to be impressed with his development, and at the end of Dillon Brooks' contract try to get off of him and really elevate Tari, I wouldn't be surprised with that at all, because he's been showing a lot of great flashes this season too. And before, you know, Amen Thompson entered into the fold in the starting lineup, before Jabari Smith had got injured, they used to call them the Terror Twins, with Tari Eason and Amen Thompson, the defensive versatility that those guys have playing together in the lineup. And when they're still on the floor together, they're able to really wreak a lot of havoc towards other teams defensively. So that's a great thing for them. And I think that Tari is a real integral part of this young core as well going forward. That brings me to talk about a player I just slightly mentioned for a second, Jabari Smith Jr., guys. And that's really a polarizing player, I think, as well to talk about in the Houston Rockets. Number 3 overall pick in the 2022 draft. And of course, I remember the conversation in that draft. A lot of people thought that he might have went number 1 to Orlando. And I low-key, not gonna lie, shout out to Jabari Smith because he has had good flashes at times, but I really did want Paolo Banchero because imagine him being on his team. Oh my gosh, the type of player that he's been, being an all-star type of player that he's been already, that would have been crazy, but it wasn't meant to be. And like I said, the Rockets are playing well, so it's all good. But Jabari Smith Jr., I don't know if y'all guys remember, but last year at the NBA Finals, for example, Jabari Smith Jr. asked this question to Jason Tatum.
What's up, bro? Well, first of all, Jabari Smith, NBA correspondent. What would you say to somebody going into their 3rd year who hasn't really lived up to the expectation that has been set on him? What would you say?
Yes, he is still a young player, and like I mentioned before that hand injury, he was playing solid basketball, but really that hand injury and really the emergence of Amen Thompson really cost his starting lineup spot. But it is a positive thing though that Jabari has still been getting good minutes, and he's been having a positive attitude about just wanting to hoop in general, even if he is coming off the bench. And he's another player that's still averaging double digits, averaging 12.2 points per game, nearly 7 rebounds and assists, shooting 43% from the field and shooting 35% from the 3. So he for sure is a solid 3-point shooter. I remember the conversation about him during the draft is that he was a great shot blocker and defender, but also he can extend from the 3-point line. So we're really seeing that as well be consistent in the NBA level, just not at the type of rate that we might have expected, or not at the rate that we expected from a number 3 overall pick, potentially having all-star potential. So I can't say with conviction, honestly, that Jabari Smith Jr. is a part of this young core future. I think that we can for sure say a player like Amen Thompson, Alperen Sengun. In my opinion, I think Jaylen Green should be a part of the young core future for his team too, unless you can get a player like a Devin Booker. If not, you have to keep Jaylen Green because like I said, I think that he can continue to be an electric volume scorer, and if he becomes more efficient, you will benefit from having him. But anyways, for sure, Amen, Alperen Sengun, Jaylen Green, in my opinion, also as well, Tari, Eason. Those 4 right there should be fundamental pieces. Jabari Smith Jr. though, man, next year it'll be his last year on his rookie contract, so I think that's going to tell a lot. And of course, we have to see how this year ends too, but we're going to see if he's going to be a type of player the Rockets would let go after, you know, him being a restricted free agency after the 2026 season. So that's going to be a conversation that looms next year going there too. But before I end this video and really just wrap it up, I do want to talk about a player like a Cam Whitmore and a Reed Shepherd, because those players have real potential as well too. And of course, Cam is just in his 2nd season. Now, Cam Whitmore, really a guy in the Houston area, in my opinion. A lot of people throughout the league see the type of potential that he has, but in the Houston area specifically, he's very polarizing, not because of his skill and his ability, but I think it's because of his attitude at times. And I don't blame him necessarily, and understand, because, you know, he is a young player, and like I said, he is very gifted, has a lot of potential, and gets mad at times of the short leash that Ime Udoka has on him this season. I mean, he's averaging less minutes than he had last year. Last year as a rookie, he averaged nearly 19 minutes per game, but now he's averaging 16.2, and at times he'll have a lot of DNPs as well. But even with that though, he's still averaging 9 points per game too as well. When he gets out there, he's for sure going to try to get his buckets, and that's a lot of the conversation too, that he's going to shoot the ball regardless. But at times, I mean, he shows you the type of potential that he has, and he's shooting nearly 35% from 3 as well too. I think that he's one player that's very interesting that I'm looking forward to seeing obviously this season. I mean, we'll see if Udoka can find minutes for him, you know, going into the finish of the regular season and into the playoffs. I'm not sure, wouldn't be surprised if he has DNPs in the playoffs. But next year, you know how training camp goes, how really going into the 25-26 season, if he's gonna have more of a role next year to get more time to be a fixture and be a role player on this team that can potentially get more minutes, because I think he has all the traits and abilities to be a fundamental piece and part of this young core as well. Just like I was talking about with that other 4 with Amen, Alp, Jaylen, and Tari Eason, I think Cam, he could be one of those pieces as well too. It just comes with the consistency of his playing time, and really the consistency of him just showing the coaches that he's locked in, that he's bought in, he's ready to do the dirty work and things of that nature to have a pivotal role on this team. But lastly, before I wrap up the video, talking about a guy in Reed Shepherd. Guys, y'all gotta be patient with him, and I know a lot of people might not want to hear that, but there's a lot of reasons why I say that. First and foremost, everyone knew that 2024 draft was not the strongest. You talk about a player in the number 1 pick in Zachariah Richeche, people barely talk about him. It's because that draft was not strongest, not even close to what this 2025 NBA draft is. But in Reed Shepherd, you have a guy, in my opinion, who could be like a Kirk Heinrich type of player, a player who's going to be a solid point guard potentially off of the bench, who can be a really key shooter. And you need shooting in the NBA to survive. He hasn't been able to get a lot of minutes, like I said, obviously with all the depth and talent this team has from a young player standpoint, but also from vets as well too. And this year he hasn't played a lot. Not really even going to mention his stats too much because he's only averaging 4 points per game, but also the minutes he's averaging is only 12 minutes per game, but that really fluctuates because he gets a lot of DNPs too, but he can be a player that has a key role going forward. Now, not this season. I think that we'll probably get a small uptick in his numbers next year. It really just depends on how he guards defensively too, because teams are for sure gonna attack him. That's just the reality of the situation. So Reed is gonna have to show that he's gonna be able to guard at times and be an active and willing participant defensively. But he was drafted number 3 overall because of the type of three-point shooting that he provides. I mean, he shot 50% from the 3 at Kentucky in his one season as a freshman last year. So he was drafted there for a reason, guys. I think it's a kind of different comparison from him being a number 3 overall pick to Jabari being a number 3 overall pick, because in the 2022 draft, Jabari was drafted after guys like Apollo Banchero and a Chet Holmgren, who we all recognize as being potential all-star big men, and Paulo, who's already is an all-star big man, really nearly a superstar level player. But with Jabari, he hasn't reached that at all, but he's still been solid. But with Reed, like I said, the draft that he was drafted in wasn't too crazy, so you can't really be mad about his production, especially when you have a good problem in all the talent that you have in Houston this year and how they have overachieved this season and how they're going to continue to be good for years to come. So that's really why I say people shouldn't underestimate the Rockets. The recording of this video, like I said, the Rockets are a 2 seed and really can't get too much into who they might play yet. Obviously right now, if you look at the play-in teams, you have the Warriors, the Timberwolves, the Kings, and the Mavericks. If I had to predict the teams that would be the 7th and 8th seed right now out of those teams, assuming that it stays similar and those are the teams that play in the play-in, I think that it'll for sure be the Warriors and Timberwolves that make it. And for me, as a journalist that supports the Rockets, that covers the Rockets and that supports them for sure, bring on the Warriors, bring on the Timberwolves. I know the Warriors have Jimmy Butler now, and we know the type of threat that Steph is and the type of nightmares that he has caused Rockets fans in the past. But the Rockets aren't going to be scared of any team they play regardless. I think it will be really interesting if they play against the Timberwolves, or even if a team like the Clippers, you know, tailed off a little bit and had to play in the play-in. They're a 6th seed right now, but you never know what can happen. But I think whoever the Rockets play regardless, I think that they'll be able to show why they shouldn't be underestimated, why I think that they'll at least make the 2nd round, and like I said, why I wouldn't be even surprised if they make the conference finals. Now, realistically, I think that it will be the Thunder and the Nuggets, but like I said, it's a Wild West and anything can happen because the playoffs, they're going to be a gauntlet in the Western Conference and they're going to be really good, guys. But like I said, y'all let me know in the comments down below how you think the Rockets are going to do in the playoffs this year. Have you been surprised at their success this year? Do you agree with my takes about their young core and who they should build around in terms of that team going forward, and just how you think they're going to do and how the playoffs are going to be? Y'all let me know in the comments down below, guys. But with that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Always make sure to hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Like I said, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss if you want to chop it up about sports on social media, things of that nature. More playoff teams that we're going to talk about. I plan to have a playoff preview on the Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers, so y'all stay tuned for those 2 teams for sure, and really all the major contenders that I'm going to be breaking down ahead of the playoffs, and more video content breaking down the NFL draft coming soon. We're going to talk about some of the top prospects that I believe are in the NFL draft, and just more NFL videos in general and NBA videos in general. So y'all be blessed. I appreciate y'all support always. Know that y'all matter. God loves you. You are loved. Jesus loves you, guys. Y'all have purpose. You are here for a reason, not by a mistake or accident. Y'all be blessed. I love y'all, guys. Y'all have a good one.